them. Crickets, distant water, the occasional murmur of voices. It's peaceful, and yet even here you can feel it, that subtle pull. The idea that somewhere, just beneath the surface of an ordinary river, something extraordinary might be waiting. It's enough to keep you awake a little longer than usual, enough to make you wonder, enough to change everything, one whisper at a time. The whisper has followed you. Not loudly, not urgently, but persistently, like a thought that keeps returning just as you're about to fall asleep. You try to ignore it at first. You go about your day, tending to the small, familiar routines that once felt solid and dependable. But now, everything feels slightly temporary. You stand in a modest town far from California, maybe somewhere in Missouri, or along the edge of the Mississippi, where life moves at a steady, predictable pace. The morning begins with chores, the same road, the same faces, the same conversations about weather and crops, and whether the neighbour's cow has once again wandered somewhere it shouldn't. And yet, tucked between those ordinary exchanges, there it is again. Gold in California. It's spoken casually, almost as an afterthought, but it lingers. A mainstream historical fact, by 1849, tens of thousands of people, later known as the 49ers, left their homes across the United States and beyond, drawn by confirmed reports of gold from the California gold rush. Many had never travelled far before. Some had never left their county. You lean against a wooden fence, listening as a passing traveller shares what he's heard. His version is more detailed than the last one you encountered. There are rivers lined with gold, men picking it up like pebbles, fortunes made in weeks. Now, is that entirely accurate? Probably not. But accuracy is less important than possibility. You return home that evening, the idea following close behind. It sits with you at dinner. It stares at you from across the room as you try to focus on something, anything else. And then comes the moment. The quiet decision. You look around your space, your tools, your belongings, the small details that once defined your life. It's not dramatic. There's no sudden music or grand declaration. Just a simple, slightly unsettling realization. You could leave. Historians still argue whether most people truly believed they would strike it rich, or if they were simply drawn by the chance to change their lives. Some suggest it was hope, others say it was restlessness, a growing sense that staying put meant missing something important. Either way, the decision spreads. You notice it first in small ways. A neighbour sells off a few belongings. Someone else mentions heading west just to see. A shopkeeper starts stocking supplies that seem oddly specific, extra boots, heavy pans, tools that look more suited for digging than farming. A quirky tidbit, many hopeful prospectors had no real mining experience at all. Some reportedly believed gold could be found just lying on the ground, waiting to be picked up, like apples in an orchard, but significantly less nutritious. You can't help but imagine that scenario. You arrive in California, bend down, pick up a nugget, and then, what? Go home early? It's a charmingly optimistic plan. But optimism is powerful. Days pass, and the idea settles into something more concrete. You begin to prepare, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. There's a list forming in your mind, supplies, routes, costs, risks. You hear talk of different paths west. Some mention wagon trails stretching across vast plains. Others speak of ships that sail around the tip of South America, a journey so long it almost feels like a separate lifetime. And then there are whispers of a shortcut through Panama, involving jungle crossings and more uncertainty than anyone seems entirely comfortable admitting. None of the options sound particularly easy, but staying suddenly feels harder. You visit a small general store, where the atmosphere has shifted in subtle but noticeable ways. Conversations revolve around distances, supplies, and rumours. Someone is arguing about the best kind of boots for long travel. Another person is debating whether it's worth bringing extra cooking equipment. You pick up a simple pan, turning it over in your hands. It feels heavier than expected, more important than expected. This apparently is part of your future now. A light joke slips in as you imagine explaining this to someone from the future. Yes, I left my entire life behind to go shake a pan in a river. It sounds absurd when you put it like that, and yet, here you are, considering it very seriously. Back outside, the town feels different, not because anything has physically changed, but because people have. There's a quiet urgency in the air, a sense that time is suddenly more valuable, that decisions need to be made sooner rather than later. You pass by a family discussing plans in hushed tones. One person seems eager, almost excited. Another looks hesitant, worried about what they might lose. That tension is everywhere. You feel it too. Because leaving isn't just about going somewhere new. It's about everything you leave behind: certainty, familiarity, the quiet comfort of knowing exactly what tomorrow will look like. And yet that comfort has already been disrupted. The whisper has done its work. You spend one last evening in familiar surroundings. The sounds, the smells, the small details, all of it feels sharper now, as if you're noticing it more precisely, because you might not see it again for a long time. Or ever. You lie down, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet rhythm of the night. It should feel calming, familiar, reassuring. But instead, your thoughts drift west, to rivers you've never seen, to land you can't quite picture, to the faint, persistent idea that somewhere out there, beneath layers of water and stone, something valuable is waiting. Whether it's gold or just a different version of your life is still unclear. But the decision has already begun to take shape. And soon, like so many others, you'll step onto a path that leads away from everything you know, guided by nothing more than a rumour, a hope, and the quiet promise of something shining in the distance. The road west doesn't begin with adventure, it begins with packing. You stand beside a wagon that suddenly feels far too small for the life you're trying to fit inside it. Every item becomes a quiet negotiation. Do you really need that extra blanket? Probably. What about the heavy cooking pot? Definitely. That third pair of shoes? You hesitate, and then pack them anyway, because the idea of walking hundreds of miles with worn-out soles is deeply unsettling. Around you, others are doing the same, loading wagons, tying bundles, making last-minute decisions that somehow feel both rushed and endlessly delayed. A mainstream historical fact, by 1849, thousands of migrants set out on overland trails like the Oregon Trail and the California Trail, travelling roughly 2,000 miles to reach the goldfields. The journey often took 4 to 6 months, depending on conditions. 4 to 6 months. You pause, looking at your wagon again, mentally calculating how long you'd have to live out of it. It's not exactly a luxury setup. No soft mattress. No convenient storage compartments. Certainly no hidden snack drawer. Unless you count that one corner where you've tucked away dried food and a hopeful amount of optimism. You climb aboard, adjusting your position among supplies. It's not uncomfortable yet, but you can already sense how quickly not uncomfortable might evolve into why did I do this? The journey begins slowly, wheels creak. Animals shift their weight, the line of wagons inches forward, stretching out like a long, determined snake across the landscape. There's no dramatic send-off, just movement, step by step, mile by mile. You pass through familiar terrain at first, places that still feel connected to your old life. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, the scenery changes. Trees thin out. The land opens up. The sense of distance grows. Days settle into a rhythm. Wake up early. Pack. Travel. Stop. Repeat. It sounds simple when you list it like that, but in practice, it's a constant cycle of small challenges. Dust clings to everything. Your clothes, your skin, even your thoughts feel coated in it. The sun is relentless during the day, while nights can turn unexpectedly cold. You quickly learn that comfort is no longer the goal. Endurance is. Historians still argue whether most travellers were adequately prepared for the journey. Some accounts suggest careful planning and organised groups. Others describe people setting out with surprisingly little knowledge of what lay ahead, guided more by determination than by detailed understanding. You suspect it's a bit of both. At one stop, you sit with a small group around a modest fire. Someone is attempting to cook a meal that smells ambitious. It's hard to tell exactly what it is, but it involves beans, something vaguely resembling meat, and a level of optimism that deserves recognition. A light joke slips through as you take a cautious bite. Well, you think, if gold doesn't work out, at least you've developed a strong appreciation for whatever this is. Laughter follows, not loud or energetic, but soft, tired, and genuine. It's one of those small moments that makes the journey feel a little less heavy. You begin to notice how quickly strangers become familiar. Shared challenges have a way of accelerating connections. You learn names, habits, small details about people's lives back east. One person was a shopkeeper, another a farmer. Someone else admits they've never travelled more than a few miles from home before this. And yet, here you all are, moving together towards something uncertain. A quirky tidbit. Some wagon trains developed their own routines and informal rules, including designated times for rest, cooking, and even storytelling. In the absence of structured entertainment, people often relied on conversation, music, or simple games to pass the long evenings. You can see why. Because the days, while physically demanding, can blur together. It's the evenings that stand out, the quiet pauses where the journey slows enough for reflection. One night, you lie beneath a wide open sky, stars stretching endlessly above you. There's no city glow, no distractions, just darkness, dotted with light. It's beautiful, and slightly overwhelming. You think about how far you've come already, how far you still have to go. The distance feels both measurable and impossible at the same time. During the day, the challenges continue. River crossings require careful planning. You watch as wagons are guided through shallow waters, wheels struggling against currents. There's tension in these moments, quiet, focused, everyone aware that a single mistake could lead to lost supplies or worse. Then there are the stretches of land that seem to go on forever, flat, open, unchanging. You walk beside the wagon sometimes just to stretch your legs, your boots pressing into dry earth with each step. 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 It becomes almost meditative. Until, of course, you realise you've been walking for what feels like hours, and the landscape looks exactly the same as it did when you started. A second light joke forms, yes, the scenic route, featuring more of the same scenery. But even in that monotony, there's something quietly grounding. A rhythm, a steady forward motion that keeps you moving, even when the destination feels distant. You begin to understand that the journey itself is changing you. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. You're learning to adapt, to find comfort in small things, to measure progress not in miles, but in moments. A successful river crossing